people really enjoyed me talking about Lego sieges, so I thought we'd talk about Falcon's Castle. Firstly, I love this model. It's the only set that I have on display in my office at home. Part of what makes it interesting is it has a water wheel. I've never heard of a castle that has one. This tells us it is by fast running water, and that tells us a lot about the geography around the castle. Water wheels are normally on water that's running down steep slopes, where the water can get the energy required to drive the wheel. This means that the castle is not at the top of the hill. This means that there's a much bigger hill near the castle that the water is flowing around, and this puts our besieging army in a great position. Because of the conservation of energy, the force a boulder is going to hit the castle is going to go up hugely if you can fire down from the high ground. If we can get up higher than the castle, our first step in the siege would be projectiles, trebuchets, and if we can get them, cannons. If we can surround the castle and bombard it, we can hopefully destroy walls and towers without having to risk our men by getting too close. Even better, when walls and towers collapse, rubble is going to fall off. This rubble may make building a causeway to the castle a lot easier, and this means the defenders are going to have less opportunity to shoot our men as they build it. If our bombardment goes well enough, we may even see gaps in the walls that we could wade across the moat to without building a causeway itself. The drawbridge and gatehouse is mainly wood, and they don't have a portcullis, so if we focus the bombardment there, we're very likely to get an easy way in. If we can spare the manpower to build multiple causeways, perhaps we can have our men on the other side of the castle scaling ladders and divide their forces during their final assault. Long story short, castles almost never have water wheels because they are built on high ground, and water wheels only work on lower ground. If you give up the high ground, you let other people's bombardments hit much harder, and you risk losing your castle as a result. So it's a much better idea to have the castle at the top of the mountain and then have the water wheel at the bottom of the mountain. And if the water wheel is under attack, send out your knights to protect the water wheel. However, there is one castle that has something like a water wheel that I know of, Carew Castle in Wales. It has something called a tidal mill. It's not really attached to the castle in the same way that the Lego model has a water wheel on the side. It's on a building that's maybe a few hundred meters away, and it acts as a dam so that when the tide goes out, the water level drops on one side of it, and this medieval dam keeps the water back behind it. And then as the water flows out, it drives this wheel, which allows people to mill their grain and flour so they can make bread and all of those kinds of things that people like to eat. Perhaps you could imagine that Falcons Castle isn't about halfway down the hill, but a fort on an estuary where the waves and tides could drive the wheel. To make this work, perhaps there is a big network of tidal walls around it, and the water wheel is being driven by water rushing between these. This is a really cool way of reimagining the castle, because other than high places, most other castles are built on coasts. If you have bays or inlets that there aren't castles to defend, Vikings could attack them, or in a later era, perhaps even the French. So you need castles on your waterways. It adds a lot to what the defenders can do to keep the castle going, as they may be able to fish from the walls or have tidal pools where crabs can get trapped. This adds up to the defenders being able to last much longer in a siege. But this castle remains quite weak. It only has one set of walls, and they're little more than a story high. So even if it has a moat or an estuary or a river protecting it, people on boats with grappling hooks are probably going to be able to scale them. If the castle has a good garrison, and you doubted you could scale the walls and storm the castle, building a causeway and breaking the drawbridge would be the best thing to do. Because the castle has no keep, baileys, or internal defenses, it's going to be very hard for the defenders to hold the inside of the castle. In my opinion, the most thing to do with a castle is to imitate the generations of builders who would add to each other's work and produce bigger and bigger walls, bigger and bigger towers. And I've actually done exactly that for Falcon's Castle. This began as a castle I built when I was looking at the creator set and wondering what I would do when I finally got it. It takes architectural cues from Falcon's Castle and expands on them and develops them in different directions. If I had been asked to produce a range to go with Falcon's Castle, it would have been something like this. Lots of cool walls and features that that could be models in their own right, but that you can also put together to build something gigantic, uses all of these historical ideas about portcullises and water gates. This monster is a work in progress and shows what Falklands castles could be if the original structure was built up to make a large keep and an outer wall and gatehouse was added outside of it. I'll be releasing instructions for this soon, so subscribe and ring the bell if you want to be able to build this. You're going to be able to combine it with Falcons Castle to produce all kinds of giant castles. I'm hoping to see all kinds of wild builds where people think of ways of combining them that I would never expect. If there's anything you'd especially like to see in a castle, please put it in the comments. I really love collaborative building. If it's something huge like a tidal mill, perhaps we can build it as an extension of the model. But if it's something small enough, then maybe, we can tuck it away on one of the towers. In the next few episodes, I'll be continuing to talk about sieging classic Lego castles whilst this model continues to be built. Please comment below if you want to see a specific Lego castle included in the series, and maybe it's what we'll do next. Bye!